Hi, Molly. Welcome to the Perfect Child podcast.
Hi, Belinda. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm excited to be interviewing you to talk about the Fajardo Method. I feel like we could be talking about this subject with a lot of people all the time that practice it and just never really get to the deepest part of it, unless we become Fajardo Method, holistic biomechanics people.
It is very, very rich and dense materials. There's always a different way in. I agree.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm going to start with your bio. Molly Bennett is a mother, movement educator, and apprentice instructor of the Fajardo Method of Holistic Biomechanics. With over 10 years of experience, she has taught a variety of modalities integrating movement and the nervous system, including Pilates and the Alexander technique. She specializes in rehabilitative movement, chronic pain, and hypermobility EDS. And I'm assuming EDS is Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome.
It is.
Okay. Her background also includes work with children in both special needs and traditional classroom settings, as well as in the visual and performing arts. Is there anything else you'd like to add to that, Molly?
That pretty much sums it up. And I would say that in this moment in my life, the mother part is so dominant. So you'll hear more, but that's where I'm at.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Feel good. That's why we've invited you on to share
totally.
all about this goodness that's happening.
Totally.
First, can you share with us why are we integrating movement with the nervous system? Like, what does that look like? What are we doing
Yeah.
and why?
Yeah. So I think that it's helpful to understand initially that the state of my nervous system in any given is going to determine how movement happens, how movement is initiated. So if I'm in a fight or flight state, when I go to move my body in any context, I'm going to kind of come out with a particular way that my body moves. And if I'm in a parasympathetic state, which is the opposite of the fight or flight state, they're kind of one or the other, I'm going to move in a totally different way. And it might not be immediately apparent if I'm just watching somebody or even observing myself, but internally, there's a whole universe of things that are kind of functioning differently depending on what state I'm in. So, if we understand that the nervous system state is influencing how this movement happens, it helps to kind of dial it down a little bit further and go like, okay, what's actually going on with the nervous system itself? Because I think I'm hearing a lot of people speaking more about the nervous system, its impact on our general physical health, mental well-being, and that is so important. And sometimes when things kind of get picked up in the zeitgeist like this, we lose a little bit of like what actually is it though? Because I hear the nervous system used like linguistically almost as a synonym for my mental health. Like, oh, my nervous system's out of whack. Like, I'm not feeling good. And
Mhm.
they're related. They're definitely influence one another, but it's not the same thing. When I'm actually looking at what the nervous system is, it's human tissue. It's inside me. It's my brain, it's my spinal cord, it's my nerves. And I hope that that is an empowering piece of information, people. I know it is for me because it's inside you. You can have influence over how it functions. So I'm not trying to control it. And it's actually not possible to control it. My nervous system is just always going to respond based on the information that it has. But I can influence it by influencing what kind of information it's getting and by influencing how I move. So if I use my attention to stimulate my nerves, I can engage something called the sensory motor loop. So I have these nerves, like I said, they run throughout our bodies. And we want to, with the Fajardo method, improve communication between those nerves and the brain. So if I put my attention, let's say, on the palm of my hand, and I'm noticing not necessarily like how it looks or how it feels, but literally the location of it. Where is it in space? What's it up to? And then I notice another point, like my armpit. That act of just putting my attention on these locations in my body through my sensory nerves, it sends a signal up to my brain, and my brain is going to process that information and respond by sending a motor signal back out. So the sensory, the nervous system part, and the motor, the movement part, are really closely linked together. They respond to each other. So the what does this look like, right? If I'm putting my attention on these locations in my body, I'm letting my brain do its thing, I get this response. I am creating an opening. It's like a window for my body to perceive safety in the environment. So maybe I was in a fight or flight state when I went to do this exercise. And by sensing and activating those sensory nerves, I'm picking up more information about the environment. I'm probably going to perceive that I'm safe because for most of us, 99% of the time, if I'm doing this practice in my room, there's no bear, my life is not at stake, there's no threat. So I have the opportunity to perceive that safety. I have the opportunity for my brain to take that information, maybe experience a state change into the parasympathetic state. And if I do, and I get this motor response down my arm, and then I start to practice moving from that place, I get to rehearse and practice moving in a way when I'm in that state. And in that state, my body's functioning differently, like I said. So the way that my joints are organized and my bones are organized and my muscles and my fascia, it's all different. It can slide more easily. It's more hydrated. There's more space in the joints. So, for example, yes, go for it.
Okay, so when you are noticing your hand and your armpit, you're not necessarily moving any of it. You're just noticing where it's at.
Yeah, I might begin by just noticing where it's at. The movement comes later. Or, I mean, it can
Okay.
happen at the same time too. I think there's different ways to engage, but absolutely, if I just start without the movement, I just start with the sensory piece, change can happen just from that level of engaging.
Okay. And then you followed that up with saying, when you notice that, then everything around there flows better and is more hydrated. So it's hydrating itself just by the awareness without me actually drinking water.
Correct. Yes, we obviously need to drink water to be alive, but the way that my tissues hydrate themselves has much more to do with the state of my nervous system and, my hormonal cascade in response to that. And the tissue um, has adequate hydration and water to support movement. Yes.
And so you're saying with this awareness, just the awareness puts you in a state where your tissues are then more hydrated.
It can. It
Can
can.
be.
And that is the intention. And sometimes it takes a couple tries, right? Sometimes like there's all sorts of situations, conditions, mental states that can make it require a little more patience, and that's okay too. But with practice and repetition, typically it's that, right? We're opening that door so that there's potential for this to occur. And I've never had an experience where, with enough patience, people get there. Yeah.
Okay, so go back to what you were saying. You ended before I interrupted you. You were
No, that's
talking
great.
about noticing, and then you could flow into movement.
Yes, if I add the
Okay.
movement once I'm in that state, I get to um, give my brain and my body an opportunity to practice moving in a way where my whole body is organized in a way that's more supportive of optimal health. And we're really focused today on like the nervous system and movement, and that's my focus too. But um, all of the body systems kind of sync up and function differently in this state as well. So the way I'm breathing changes, the way that I'm digesting changes, the hydration, lymphatic fluid, all these things change. So the more I practice moving from that place, then when I go out and I'm living my life, my brain's like, oh, I have this other option. I didn't realize maybe, right, that I could move from this place because I've had so much practice moving in fight or flight. And so that's where the repetitive nature of it kind of comes in is we rehearse and we rehearse so that my brain learns this is an option too. When I'm perceiving safety, I always have this option to move from a place that's more supportive of my whole body's health.
Okay, so a session with you would look like perception first and then movement. And it would just
Yes.
be the practice of that.
Yep, it's
And
the
it's just
practice.
perceiving different parts of your body uh, at each session.
Totally. We are kind of building and improving the accuracy of this brain map. We all have in our brains this map of like all the different body parts, where they are in relationship to each other. That's the location piece.
Mhm.
And so if we work, 1 week at a time and work on mapping these different parts, we improve the accuracy so that when we go to move, my brain goes again, oh, okay, this is how it's all connected. My map is clear or more clear than it was. And that can, it decreases um, usually like chronic pain challenges, a lot of other chronic health stuff that can come from that. If you imagine like if you tried to step off a curb, but your map of where your hip was like up in your armpit, it would be pretty hard to like, right? You'd be kind of wobbly, you'd probably trip. So we're improving that accuracy so that everything functions more as a whole.
Okay, this is really interesting because I just interviewed a baby specialist who was
Mhm.
talking about how babies their perception is much slower.
Mm,
And so when we move them from point A to point B, when they get to point B, they haven't realized that they got there yet. So it's very
mm,
jarring. And so what you're describing seems to me that on a regular basis, as humans, because of the way we're raised and because we don't know anything about our internal structure, that we literally jar our bodies all day long because we're just moving from point A to point B without that perception and sort of
mm,
alerting or communicating to our body with our body saying, oh,
mm.
here we are at this moment. And now we're going to
Yes.
move, as opposed to just jumping out of bed and jumping in the shower and putting our shoes on, running out the door. And there's like no moment to process. Like the body's like, hold up.
Totally, totally. Hold up, take a beat and sense. And the more that we shift into this, we would call like a parasympathetic dominant state, where I'm spending more than 50% of my day in this state, it actually requires less of the pause because I'm like, oh, I'm just sensing all the time. I don't have to be so intentional about it. And intention is important, but like I have 500 other things I need to be intentional about. So it'd be great if my body just did it automatically.
Yeah.
So that's this practice is it's I think of it as like it's a lot of work up front to kind of get that system a little more adaptable and acclimated to sensing in a more continuous way.
Yeah.
And in my experience, there's this threshold where it's like, oh, now it's just kind of happening. And yes, there's maintenance and there's fine tuning I can continue to do. And I just keep doing it because I think it's amazing and fun and I love it.
Yeah.
But I know, in my gut that I could stop and my body knows what it's doing. And it can just do it without me having to exercise any like hypervigilance or, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Always when I am interviewing people, I just keep seeing ways that our education system could be improved to support humans as a whole. All right, moving away from that.
A whole other wormhole.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So you recently had a baby, and this is really the juicy part of why I'm inviting you on is because he's now 7 months old now, and you have said that you're parenting in a way that is highly informed by what you've learned in the Fajardo method.
Mhm.
And so tell me what that looks like. What are you seeing? What is it?
Totally, totally. There's like the practice piece, or I think of it as like I'm like doing my mother maintenance and like personal maintenance, and then also how I'm engaging with him as his own person, and then also how we're fitting together. There's so many in the dyad, there's like so many layers. So definitely I think about putting my own oxygen mask on first. So it's like if
Always.
I'm not regulated, and I can tell like immediately if I'm kind of flying off the handle and he's like, what is going on? And he gets dysregulated and we can all feel it. So I have my own practice I do on my own time. And sometimes I'm engaging in it with him as well, which is this like sensory piece. I'm not doing the
Mhm.
repetitive movement with him, but I'm sensing my body while I'm engaging with him. Um, and then there's like, how am I relating to him as his own person? the wisdom of his body, the wisdom of his nervous system and his development. So from the movement perspective, it's in the first year of life, the learning curve is wild. It's like off the charts. It's so fast and it's so incredible to watch them learn how to use their bodies to get what they want and to explore what they want. And these patterns of movement build upon each other. We go from rolling to, a lot of different shifting on all fours and then crawling and then walking. And something that I really hold as a priority in my parenting is allowing his body to figure it out.
Mhm.
And how do I support him in that? And a lot of it is not interfering and doing what I need to do to support the frustration that arises in him as he's going through that learning process. So, when he was learning how to roll, oh my God, like the lessons for me, because I don't know, I'm trying to think. It took probably from when he first started, like just barely rolling to his side to rolling all the way over, maybe like 2.5 months or so. I'm not sure. And watching his process and the intensity of the frustration that would emerge because he wanted it so bad and he had to go through his learning process to figure it out. And what I understand about his learning process in this context is the speed at which he is learning or executing these movements is also telling me something about his capacity. So I'm not going to put him on his belly before he can get there himself. He's showing me
Oh,
through what he's capable of doing in terms of a role, right? That um, I know that when he can get there himself, his spine is ready, his fascia is ready, everything in his structure and his internal world. Yes.
okay. So you just said you're not going to put him on his belly before he's ready. And conventional doctors will say they need tummy time.
Yes, this is my hot take. So, um, so pressure on the tummy is really important. So, if you want a baby wear, if you want to have your baby on your chest, like belly to belly, that's wonderful, and that's a very like rich sensory and like co-regulating experience for them. If I put a baby on their belly on like a flat, firm surface before they're
Yeah.
ready, it is going to impact the development of the spine, and it is going to impact kind of how their system organizes itself. So I know that if he can get into that position on his own, that his spine is prepared to support the curve, or we call it an arch, that happens in
Mhm.
that position where they lift their head up and you see this beautiful arcing kind of shape in the front of their body. That's actually like it looks simple-ish, but that's a huge change inside a baby's body because they're born in a C curve. They're born in that fetal
Yeah.
position. It's a gigantic change to be able to get into that position. And then once they can get there on their own, right, that's a cue for me that his fascia can support and his tone can support that position. And then his spine figures it out from there and he'll start to develop the curves that we think of like in a child's or an adult's spine that will
Hmm.
support walking and all the movement, more complex movement that's down the road.
So are you always putting a baby down on their back first?
I personally am always putting him down on his back first if he's just having playtime. But we would
Even
practice. Mhm.
even if he's already done the flip over and you know he can be on his stomach, when you put him down on the hard surface of the floor, you will always put him on his back first.
Once he can get onto his belly himself, it's okay to put him on his belly because then that's right, like I know that he can support that.
Okay.
But I personally waited till he was doing that on his own. And then with like crawling, kind of same thing. I will support him in terms of like giving him the sensory feedback. So like I'll massage his feet or I'll, like touch him gently on like his back or his bum or the sides of his legs to kind of help him with that mapping process. But I personally am not doing the like, okay, and you move your legs like this and you reach your arm, right? I want to let him figure it out because it's innate. They have all the puzzle pieces to figure it out with enough time.
Yeah. Wow. So you're really being intentional and patient with allowing your baby to move at his own pace. And then you also have that prior knowledge about the nervous system and the spine. So like not to put your baby on their belly just because they're a certain age, certain number of months.
It's an interesting process to kind of have the conventional wisdom and then this other information about the body and kind of see how it all fits together. Because I understand where the suggestion is not happening in a vacuum. We had that back to sleep campaign, and so it's like, okay, it's important for them to have that stimulation on the front of the body. And I'm thinking, how can I do that in a way that's not gonna interfere with his learning curve in this regard?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me what else? What else are you noticing in
Mm.
between the mother-baby diet?
Mm. Um, the constant learning. That's like never,
From day
ever, ever
one.
stops from day one. I know it will never stop. I, the way I think about it for myself often is like, I've said this, when he has a leap, I have a leap. And as he's growing, I'm growing because as his mother, it's my job and I want to be attuned to him as best I can. Um, and as he's changing, the way that he signals changes, the way that, right, that he's indicating to me that he needs support or wants to figure it out or whatever that is, his movement capacity changes. So I have to meet that in a new way. And so it's that kind of classic, parents going like, as soon as you think you've figured it out, it changes again.
Yeah,
And I feel like I'm experiencing
always.
that like every minute, every hour. It's constant because, I will experience just as a human being this sort of threshold in my capacity where, okay, I feel like I understand what his sounds mean. Um, and then something changes and I have to recalibrate. And sometimes because I'm low on sleep, there's more stress in my life now than there was before the baby. Um, I have to find a way to meet the challenge, keep supporting my own structure, my oxygen mask, and meet his needs. And so, I have my practice, the kind of sensory piece that I do on my own, and sometimes in the moment with him, I hit a limit and I'm like, I unfortunately am not able to meet you with the calmness and the attunement and the regulation that I wish I had.
Mhm.
How do I support my system right now? Not tonight when I'm alone and you're asleep, but right now. And sometimes that looks like more sensory input for me. So, like, right, giving
Okay.
myself.
You'll like put him down and like start just kind of
Mhm.
like
Or
telling your
hold him
body
and
where
do
you're
it,
at.
right?
Yeah,
Totally.
yeah.
Totally. It
Here I
can be that.
am.
Here I am.
Hmm,
Here's the
hmm.
input. Something that's either like strong or familiar. So also it's like, okay, well, let's go outside, right? It's if I'm getting sounds of nature and the feeling of like air on my face and something that is familiar and safe that my body already recognizes as
Yeah,
safety cue,
yeah.
that's really helpful too. It's helpful for him as well, but yeah, it's all together. Um, so managing his frustration, my frustration along that learning curve and like figuring out how to kind of meet those needs on the fly is like my exploration of the moment.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's really helpful. And yeah, I mean, it's just everything takes practice. So the fact
Absolutely.
that you're practicing every day, it just will help you meet those challenges as they come,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right?
Definitely.
Oh, so like I was saying, I had just interviewed, her name is Dr. Emily Spaeth from Be Well Baby.
Mm.
And I think that she has on her website a resource where you can learn ASL.
Oh,
So you
cool.
can like,
Mm.
because her thing is baby consent. So if you give the
Mm.
baby words, then they'll be
Yeah.
able to communicate a little bit better. So that might be something you want to check out.
Totally. That's very cool. I love that. I love that.
Yeah. This is going to be really fun. I feel like I want to interview you at like different intervals. Like
Yeah.
he's 7 months now. Like let's talk
Mm-hmm.
again in like when he's 2 years and then when he's five
Totally.
years, just to kind of like get the check-in of like
Mm-hmm.
the nervous system and the Fajardo method.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, Tell me,
Yeah.
how did you what inspired you to learn about the Fajardo method?
hmm So I've been practicing for I think 6 years, and prior to that, I was engaged in these other somatic modalities that you mentioned at the beginning. Um, I was well, originally way back. I was born with Ehlers Danlos Syndrome, the EDS that you mentioned,
Okay.
that I tend to focus on in my work, which is it's hypermobility, kind of in a fairly extreme way. I'd say there's a lot of chronic pain associated with it, and joints will dislocate without much force. So there's a lot of like management, a lot of managing the system, and the kind of frame in Western medicine is this is a genetic condition, right? Management is your option. And I also grew up in a household with a doctor dad. So that was very much his
Great.
frame too. Pros and cons, because obviously that frame didn't end up being the thing that worked for me. However, he did recognize it early. So I do think in a way that gave me a head start in like, okay, how do I work with this thing? Um, it got really bad in college and kind of after I graduated, and I sort of realized, okay, I like if I don't start relating to this in a more involved way, I just could see the path that was ahead of me in terms of what those options were. So I started exploring different ways of moving. Strengthening is often framed as like the best way to support a hypermobile body, like muscle building, strength building. So that was the Pilates angle. Um, and different things I tried, they all kind of helped a little bit, but it was always within this frame of managing something that was
Right.
supposedly a fixed state. Um, and after a couple years of that, I started to have an intuition, a suspicion that there was a little more to it, that I was noticing a connection between my emotional state and my symptoms. And I started exploring more kind of hybrid somatic things. I dabbled in somatic experiencing a little bit and some other stuff like that. Um, and I had this one encounter with a roommate at the time. We had a little fight, and um, I felt my blood pressure just drop. Like I almost passed out. And this was a common comorbidity of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome is something called dysautonomia, or in severe cases, it's called POTS, P-O-T-S, that can involve like losing consciousness, passing out, falling over. And I felt this happen and was like, okay, I've been fine all day. And now
Yeah.
I'm having this flare up randomly when I'm having this interpersonal conflict. Like, it's not a coincidence. That happened a couple months before I was introduced to Alicia Fajardo, who created this method. We started working together, and I think it was like our fourth session or something. We were working with the lungs, which is an organ I know I mentioned, like, the hands, the armpits, all you can map bones, you can map muscles or organs. And we were working with my lungs, and by the end of the session, I could tell something had changed. I was laying down and I sat up and I was like, I think something's wrong. I can't turn like, I feel like I'm wearing a cervical collar. I can't turn my head very much.
Mhm.
And she said, that is an appropriate range of motion for your neck. What she didn't say, because she was being polite, was, you're so used to turning your head around like an owl because of your hypermobility that this
Yeah.
feels like no range of motion, but actually, this is like how much you're supposed to have. And it was just like the clouds parted, and I said, okay, this is what I've been looking for, because this thing that I was told couldn't change, it literally changed in like 15 minutes.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
and from that moment, I was like, I don't know what this path is going to look like, but this
I'm
is
in.
getting me out. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I just continued to practice personally. And my symptoms just slowly faded and faded to the point that like I don't think about them anymore. Um, I don't really experience them anymore, outside of the context of like talking to clients who are dealing with these things. It's not really a part of my life anymore. So real 180 experience. Yeah.
Okay, so I want to go back to one thing that you mentioned was you were noticing that your emotions were connected to your symptoms. So then, if you have this Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, do you feel that so basically your body responds to your emotions, right? Your emotional state, your body is responding, and this is what's happening.
Hmm.
And now that you're not experiencing those symptoms anymore because you've brought your body back to balance, how is that affecting your emotional state
As
or
like
vice
the
versa?
result of the result of doing the practice. How does
Yeah.
that? Yeah,
Like,
I would say I have a much higher degree of awareness of it. So like I'm still human. I still have all of those emotions and everything that human beings experience, but I notice them differently. Um, I feel like I have tools to work with them when they're coming up. I mean, that's the interesting thing about working with the nervous system because it's not the same as emotional regulation, like I mentioned, but it will influence that. Um, so I have more confidence now that when stress is high, when things are coming my way, that I have tools to meet the moment. Um, it's not always immediate. Sometimes it's like, let me go back to the drawing board and see how I can engage my system to support this. But I've been through it and I've had that experience of like, I don't have to be overwhelmed by this to a
mm-hmm.
point of freeze. I don't have to be overwhelmed by my circumstances, whether they be internal or external, to the point of feeling like there's nothing I can do. There's always something I can do. And like I said before, it's not about control,
No.
it's about like working with the moment and finding those openings and those windows to like make a different choice.
So, do you feel that the Fajardo method, okay, no. Do you feel that the EDS is a result of your body telling you it's out of balance and it needs support? And it's literally telling you in every way possible. And then when you discovered the Fajardo method and you were able to balance your body, then it's not overreacting like it did
Mm,
when you associated with the symptoms of EDS.
that's a good question. Um, in a broad sense, yes. Um, it's tricky to say because I had it my whole life. EDS is interesting because again, like they'll tell you it's a genetic thing, and yet in my practice, and I've worked with so many different people with EDS, like I had it from birth. I had signs of it from birth, but I've worked with people who were like fine until they had a baby, and then all of a sudden they have full-blown symptoms. So so for me personally, because this had always been a part of my embodied experience,
Mhm.
I don't know that I necessarily experienced it as like, oh, suddenly I'm getting this signal. Um, but I do think I've always had this, yeah, sense that things could be different, um, and that there was a more holistic way of looking at everything. And I feel like I've found that in this.
Yeah.
And so even though the result isn't like I'm just happy all the time and I'm just regulated all the
That's not the
time, and
point.
that's right, that's not the point.
That's not the point.
It's like I have a relationship with my body now instead of always trying to escape it.
Yes.
That's huge.
That's huge. And now that I'm thinking about the way that you put that, it's like, oh, yes, because I talk about this all the time now, is the power over system that our society seems to reside
Mm,
in. And
mm-hmm.
this whole like always wanting to control things. And what the Fajardo method allows us to do is actually work in harmony with our bodies as opposed to controlling symptoms
Yes.
or
Yes.
managing whatever. It's literally like, let us just invite the body into the conversation, which that's what the body's always wanting
Mm-hmm.
is this
Mm-hmm.
conversation. And it's always communicating with us. But because we're raised in a way where anytime we feel anything, it's a problem
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and we're
Mm-hmm.
not wanting to collaborate, we
Yes.
just want to get rid of.
Yes.
And so this Fajardo method presents something different that's a little a softer and
Yeah.
better.
It requires trust. It requires trust that, yeah, if I release that control and I listen and I have patience and I let things unfold, um, they will unfold for the better. It's
Yeah.
hard to do. It's hard when you're in pain. It's hard when you've been struggling for a long time and you've tried a lot of stuff. If anyone wants to try, like the advice I would give is like if there is that seed in you that like you just know that things can be better, like maybe that seed is there because that's true and it's innate and it's not something you have to like do from above, like you said, that power over, but like just set up the conditions to kind of let it emerge and it will emerge.
Yeah. And also recognize if you've been in pain for a really long time, what has your practice been? Has it been a power over approach?
Yes. Yes.
And if you have any symptoms or anything that you've been struggling with and you happen upon this podcast, this particular episode, this is probably a little seed that's telling you seek out Fajardo. And if it's not Fajardo, seek out something else that you know is going to be collaborative.
Totally. There are a lot of ways that we can listen.
So many ways.
Yeah.
We just don't know how. And it's really funny because you started out our conversation by saying understanding your nervous system and understanding it's internal and like it's empowering because it's something we can work on.
Mm.
But literally, I was like, but that's what's daunting for people
Mm.
because we only know how to deal from the outside in.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
while
That's
it does seem empowering and it is empowering once you actually master it and do it, at the beginning, it doesn't feel empowering because we don't know.
we don't know. We don't know. It's so hard. It's so hard to take that leap of faith. It's challenging. And just yeah, find the seed, whatever it is for you. Find the seed of like hope and if you have maybe like any evidence in your life that that ever worked for you, like sometimes I think about that, like when in my history has this actually worked out and kind of hold on to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what was the one thing that I was going to say? But must not have been important. Tell me if there's one thing that you can share with our audience that might help them to perceive their body a little differently, or like maybe
Mm,
it's one thing you wake up in the morning and you do, or sometime in the
mm,
afternoon or before
mm.
bed. What do you think?
Yeah. The first thing that comes to mind when you say that is sound. So when we go into fight or flight, like our hearing and our sound tends to narrow. That's kind of one of the like major changes. So, don't do this if you're in an environment where the sound is triggering to you. Maybe try something else. But otherwise, if you kind of like open your ears and just let whatever ambient sound in the environment, let it in, that can be a really quick and accessible tool to start to engage your sensory system and maybe pick up on some of those cues of safety.
Thank you.
Of
That
course.
is simple enough. And now I remember what I was going to say. Don't let anybody tell you that it's genetic because there's so many people out there that are living proof
So true.
that our DNA is malleable, everything is malleable, changeable, and
Mm,
we don't have to subscribe to those diagnoses.
so true. So
Thank you, Molly. Now, how can people get in touch with you if they are interested in learning more about the Fajardo method?
yep, if you want to reach out, you can email me at mollybennettmovement@gmail.com.
Okay, perfect. That's what we'll do. Thank
Perfect.
you.
True.
Well, Molly, that was a great conversation. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we end our time together?
No, that was lovely. I really enjoyed this conversation with you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. I'm sure I'll talk to you soon in 2 years.
Absolutely. I love it.
Bye.
Bye bye.